little red flag.
She'll get one.
Clatskanie Tigers. If you turn your attention to the middle of the field, we'll have the flip of the coin. Representing Tillamook, number 73, Tim Beach, and number 34, Tillamook, Jeff Fitch. At the other guard, number 77, Travis Ness. At tackle, number 63, Mike Nelson. At the other tackle, number 76, Chris Hewson. At end, number 16, Troy Hansen. At the other end, number 8, Jonathan Cooley. At quarterback, number 9, Eric Davis. At halfback, number 31, Kevin Fulner. At tailback, number 32, Loyal Burchard. And at fullback, number 43, Wes Fulner. The Tigers are coached by Leroy Robertson. At this time, I'd like to introduce the starting offensive lineup for the Tillamook Cheesemakers. At center, number 58, Ken Coors. At guard, number 71, Jim Horton. The other guard, number 73, Tim Beach. At tackle, number 70, Steve Bodine. The other tackle position, number 78, Matt Brochon. At end, number 87, Steve Dutton. At tight end, number 42, Mark Brochon. At quarterback, number 16, Joe Warner. At halfback, number 33, Doug Brochon. The other halfback, number 34, Jeff Fitch. And fullback for the Cheesemakers, number 13, Jim Seeney. Cheesemakers are coached by John Woodward.
Do good, Jeff.
By golly. Turn your attention to the east end of the field. And stand for the Star Spangled Banner, which will be sung by Heather Martin.
close contest with Scappoose. Scappoose considered one of the major challenges the Cheesemakers face yet in their road to the league championship. Just underway here in the first quarter as Joe Werner eyes the white Tiger defense. And it'll bring up second down and 4. The severely bruised left thigh, which he encountered in the first series of the first touchdown. Running back.
Doug Rochon is not operating at 100%. He's also on the, at least partially blitzed.
He has either a severely bruised toe or possibly even a broken toe for that matter. But even at three-quarter speed, Doug's tough to keep up with. First down, Cheesemakers right at their own 40-yard line. The black-clad Mooks facing the white-clad Tigers. Handoff goes the second man through. Doug Rochon cuts up the 45, the outside 50. 45, and there he goes. 40, 30, 20, and touchdown, Cheesemakers. Well, like I say, even at three-quarter speed, Doug Rochon is tough to keep up with. And Rochon on the third play from scrimmage breaks it 60 yards as the Cheesemakers go 70 yards in 3 plays and lead 6-0 here with 10:25 remaining in the first quarter.
Cut to his right and then cut left after he got out the line of scrimmage and was able to cut the seam and go to the left hand.
And Cadillac. The word of the year is the year 19. We'll save up to the #1 dealer at #1 Main Avenue in Tillamook.
Aerolift, manufacturer of the proof-of-concept experimental aircraft known to us as the Cyclo crane, is working under a $5 million contract to continue military development of the Cyclo crane technology base, and they are providing jobs for Tillamook County. Aerolift is located at the port of Tillamook Bay and is proud to be a part of the Tillamook community. The team at Aerolift wishes the Tillamook High School Cheesemaker football team a successful season.
Cheesemakers 70 yards in 3 plays on the kickoff. Picked off back 35, 42, 3-yard line. And there for the Cheesemakers, a hard shot is put on by Aaron Graves as he cuts down the Tigers' number 58, I guess Kevin DeBella. I don't know if that's a 56 or 58, but we'll say it's a 58. Kevin DeBella, a 5'11", 168-pound junior, picked that ball up. And the Tigers will get their hands on the ball first time tonight. Cheesemakers lead 8-0. And when you got a winner, you got a winner. Cheesemakers blocks the snap, but Werner picks up the ball and throws a pass to Mark Rochon in the end zone for 2. Hand off on the I-back, going to the right side, cut down for a loss of about 2 or 3. Jeff Fitch is in there, and right next to him was Tim Beach and Jim Sini. Mark Rochon. And we'll set the Cheesemaker defense for you. Ryan Tim is linebacker, and then at the defensive backs, Aaron Graves and Paul Gubbers, Fitch, and Doug Gibsini, okay? Second man through, diving on the right side, gets back about the original line of scrimmage, maybe a yard more to the 43-yard line, where it'll bring up third down and a long 9 for the Tigers.
Interesting to know here that Clatskanie very rarely plays very many men both ways. He goes down the philosophy of keeping the team separate, but he's not having any choice this year.
He has 4 of his starters injured. That, of course, is tough. Split end wide left, flanker back on the right side for the Tigers in passing situations. But no time as Jeff Fitch buries the quarterback, Jonathan Cooley, for a loss of about 6. And it's going to bring up a 4th down to the Tigers at the 37.
That was the typical runs that they had run. Both arms ended up over the head with the ground and came down with a
off the 30, 26 by Clatskanie, gets the block to the 40, turns the corner, 45, down at about the 48-yard line, as Jim Clatskanie picked up a nice block over here on the near side by Gubbard. The Cheesemaker fullback tonight picked up good. Probably had another 60-plus yard scamper, or 40-plus yard, but Joe saw a nice hole, moved it for the first down, and the Cheesemakers have it in Tiger territory just outside the 39.
Well, in a homecoming game, you like to see a good score on the scoreboard, and I think it would be nice, too, if everybody could play. You know, it would be just a good kind of thing to happen on a homecoming game.
6:50 remaining here in the first quarter. Tillamook 8, Clatskanie nothing. Joe Werner back to pass. Pressure from the backside, over the fingertips of Jeff Fitch, and incomplete. It'll bring up 2nd and 10. Cheesemakers do want to do a little that they have not done before, or as much tonight. They want to work on their pass timing. They also want to work on their options and their pitch timing. Those are facets of the Cheesemaker game. They know they have the power up front and the brute force, but they want to go to a little more finesse when they come up against a team that may have a little more muscle up front. Joe Werner sets the Cheesemakers, goes to Clatskanie on the power sweep to the left side. Direct hit at the 40, but dives forward to the 35. And one blocker was left out there, and as Clatskanie came around the corner, he ran head-on into Steve Stebbins, 5'7", 130-pound senior, and Stebbins took Clatskanie head-on, and although Clatskanie carried the ball yet for another 4 yards, it was a nice tackle by Stebbins, and it brings up 3rd down now and 6 for the Cheesemakers at the Tiger 35. Clatskanie flanked wide right, I formation this time for the Cheesemakers. As the ball comes to the second man through, as Doug Groshong gets a nice hole, cuts the outside of the 30, down to the 25 to the 23-yard line, where Doug Groshong goes down. They'll spot it at the 24, where the Cheesemakers have another first down. That's the Cheesemakers' 3rd first down of the ball game. They lead 8-0. And, of course, it's pretty hard to get first downs when you go 60 and 70 yards in a carry. But anyway, 8-0, Cheesemakers lead. We're down to 5:45 in the first quarter over KTIL in Tillamook. From the 24-yard line, Cheesemakers of the Tigers. The Cheesemakers first goes to Fitch. Fitch goes to the outside, turns the corner to 35, 20, cuts down 10, but a flag flies in the backfield, and it could be a clip against the Cheesemakers. Maybe a holding, George says. Holding Cheesemakers, the indication. And I don't know just who he threw that on. There's Mark and Matt are both there, and Doug. So it's got to be a Groshong that got that flag.
It was just last week, Harold, that so many really long gainers were called back because of penalties. That's a thing that isn't too crucial in some of these average games, but Tillamook's going to come up against some tougher teams one of these days.
That's a good point.
And those penalties are going to cost them dearly.
And the Cheesemakers, well, now what's the deal? Oh, Tillamook fumbled at the end of that run, and the Tigers have it back at the 8-yard line, or the 7-yard line. They refused the penalty. They say at the 6-yard line, the Tigers have the football back. Jonathan Cooley at quarterback. Dives over the left side, gets maybe a yard to the 7-yard line, where it'll bring up 2nd down and 9. So apparently at the end of that run, Fitch fumbled the ball, and the Tigers came up with it at the 6, declined the Cheesemaker penalty, take over the football, and have it 2nd down and 9. Jonathan Cooley, let's check that. Eric Davis, 6'3", 168-pound junior at quarterback. Davis, quick pass over the right side. It's picked off by Pullen. Pullen picks off the ball at about the 15. Ryan Tim? Okay, Ryan Tim picks off the ball at the 15 on a quick out pattern as Eric Davis stood up and fired to his tight end. Tim just dove in the middle, grabbed the football, and the Cheesemakers get it right back. So they didn't end up getting hurt by that penalty much at all. The Mooks have it 1st down at the 10. The Tiger 10, Cheesemakers 1st down on a Ryan Tim interception.
Tim plays a real end of ball.
High formation, back to pass. Werner fires it out, off the fingers of Cini in the end zone. And he had Mark Groshong right behind him. Ball thrown just a little bit in front of Cini. He couldn't quite reach it.
I think the quarterback had to rush it a little bit. And he perhaps unloaded the ball quicker than he would have.
Need to work on the timing, both of the pitch and the passing. That opens up, especially if you get against a strong team that could stuff the run on you. Counter play, Cini dives over the 10-yard line, goes to about the 7 before he's tripped up. It'll bring up 3rd down now, and goal to go from the 7. That play is power and blocking all appears to go to the right. The fullback gets the ball and goes back to the left on a counter play going against the grain. And a hand on Cini's foot as he crossed the line of scrimmage, tripped him up. Now the Cheesemakers won, and the Cheesemakers come to the line of scrimmage as offensive coach Randy Shield comes back to the sidelines. Shield calls all of the offensive plays for the Cheesemakers. Doug Groshong battles into the 5 and into the touchdown. As Doug Groshong hits the pile, he was following the block set up by Mark and by Jeff Fitch, and he was spun around at about the 5, and so he just backed in on the backs of his blockers, and the Cheesemakers lead at 14-0 here with 3:42 remaining in the first quarter. And Joe Werner again will slip on the magic toe, and Cheesemakers will try to get the extra point conversion right. As the first snap was low, it went right through Cini's hands and dribbled to Joe Werner, who alertly picked it up and fired it to Mark Groshong in the end zone for the 2-point conversion. Ball is down, kick is on the way. It is good. 15. Clatskanie, nothing. We'll be back in a minute with more football over KTIL in Tillamook.
Smoothing and fixing our roads and driveways in general, nobody tops SC Paving. SC Paving at 9575 Trask River Road is taking this time to encourage the Mooks Football team. When SC Paving does something, they do it locally, and that in itself is supporting our community. Go support the Tillamook High School football team. And if you'd like the ride to be a lot smoother, do your part.
Phone service, it's not a guessing game. There's planning involved to make sure we can meet your service needs. We track population and business growth in all of our communities. This helps us provide you the type of service you want, when you want it. At United Telephone, we connect you to your world.
On the kickoff, the kickoff is fumbled back at the 10-yard line, finally picked off at about the 11, and then Tim hits the ball carrier back at the 13, and Govers finishes off the job at the 14, where Clatskanie will start deep in their own territory. 15-0. Tillamook leads here with 3.5 minutes to go in the first quarter. At quarterback, Eric Davis looks at the Cheesemaker defense. That must be encouraging as he rolls out, flops the pass, picked off again by Groshong, and there's 6 points. Groshong picks it off at the 15 and another 6.
That's Doug Groshong.
Doug Groshong. And that was a poorly thrown pass. That one actually wobbled over the hands of the end. That was the same pass that he had picked off last time. Only on the previous pass, it was well thrown. It was just that Tim did a good job in stepping in and intercepting it. This ball was badly overthrown. Doug Groshong picked it off at the 15, and it was 6. He was busy at the scoreboard, ringing up the score as the Cheesemakers attempt the extra point conversion. Dede to hold, Coors with a snap, high snap. Dede gets it down, the kick is low, no good, off to the right, the score. Tillamook 21, Clatskanie nothing. We'll be back in a minute with more football over KTIL in Tillamook.
The Swisher Lions